Hey everyone, I'm Kristen V. Carter, and this is Trust Your Magic podcast, where I talk to friends, family, coworkers, and more about how they trust their magic and how they inspire me to trust mine. Now today, I'm here with the one and only DJ R-Tistic. He is an educator, he's a DJ, he rocks the parties, and I am super excited to be here with him today. What's up?
What's good? How you feeling though? Thank you for having me on here.
Absolutely.
We made it happen. So,
yes.
Yeah.
The last time, we thought Noah's Ark was going to happen, so we couldn't make it.
Everything something is hyped up. I don't know if you were in LA 2011. Were you out here yet?
Yeah.
You remember Carmageddon?
Mm-hmm.
Carmageddon was the same way. It was hyped up. We thought it was going to be the worst traffic we ever saw. And 110 was empty.
Absolutely.
So it's the same exact thing. It's like every time something's hyped up out here, it never even goes down that way.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So are you an LA native?
I am, yeah.
Okay. So tell me how you got into music.
My parents are both into music. So my dad's a drummer. My mom was in the choir, and she majored in music too. He was at FAMU. She was at FAMU. He was in the band. So with them just coming from that family, like I was just born into it. So when it came to like even being a kid, they're taking me to studio sessions when I was 2 and 3 years old. And then at church, he played drums every week. So I would hear him at church. I would hear him in the choir. And they had me taking piano lessons when I was like 3 years old too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So I was doing that back when I was a kid. And then I played drums a little bit too. I had the little kid drum set too. And then I started kind of making my own beats around probably when I was about 9 years old, because my dad also, he was an arranger more than a producer. He arranged for a couple of groups. So he had production software. So I used his software when I was like 9 years old. I just kind of taught myself how to use it on an old Windows PC. Before we had Macs and all that. So
you caught the bug really early.
Yeah, it was in me early.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started doing that then, and then I didn't get into DJing until I was in college though.
So just staying around when you were 9 years old, what was it about music that you loved so much?
Just the freedom, because I was rapping and I was making my own beats.
Oh, you were rapping?
I was really making the beats just to rap to, but it was just the freedom just to be able to say what I wanted to say at my own speed and cadence. And I was a huge Snoop fan and Warren G fan, so I was just trying to imitate what they were doing. So
did you release any of those songs?
I mean, I had cassette tape I sold on campus at school. Okay. I sold like 12 copies. So
you know what?
I went Sandbox Platinum. So yeah.
It's so funny. Yeah. I had a Fisher Price, so I would make not just mixtapes, but I used to make radio shows.
Oh, for real?
So I would,
So it was in you back then, though. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah. That's funny. So you played drums at 9. You played piano at 9 as well?
Yeah, I was playing piano when I was like 3.
Okay.
3 or 4. And I was playing drums probably about the same time.
Okay.
I was taking piano lessons, but my dad was just showing me drum stuff. So at church, like youth day, I would play drums, things like that.
Did you play in church as well?
Not really. Only when it was youth day, I would play for youth day. Okay. And then in high school, I played in the band like one semester because LA band culture is not the same as it is in the South. So it was just like, okay, I'm going to do it for a semester. Then I was like, no, I'd rather do basketball and all that. So, yeah, but I was still producing and stuff then.
Yeah, so you went from drums to piano to producing.
Yeah.
So how long were you producing and what was that like?
I was probably making my own beats probably from like 4th grade, 5th grade, all the way up until college.
Wow, okay.
And then it feels like right when I stopped producing is when I started DJing, but it wasn't like, it was really no connection with it. It was more so just production. I just kind of like faded out of doing it, and then I just happened to be doing parties, and like people would ask me to bring music to it. So it was like, it feels like it was a transition into it, but it was really like separate the way it happened.
Do you still make beats now?
I don't really make beats too much. Like 9 or 10 years ago, I was still making them, but it's more so I make remixes now. So I make a lot of like edits and blends and stuff like that. So it's something that I should probably get back into, but production itself has changed a whole lot. The software we use has changed a whole lot, but I'm always making just like DJ remixes, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. So when did you decide that you wanted to be a DJ?
It was definitely in college. I feel like at first it wasn't even really me wanting to be a DJ, because I didn't want to be a DJ initially. It was more so I came from LA and I was at FAMU, and at FAMU, Florida A&M, of course, like out there, it was in that mid-late 2000s when LA music was just really dead. Like Hyphy was popping, but there was really no LA music. It was just the Game. And funny enough, I was a producer for the Game when he first came out.
So when you said you were producing, you made it sound like, I did it here and there. You produced for the Game?
Yeah. So I mean, it was
so
so long ago that I almost forget about that phase of life, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we gotta rewind. So, because you made it sound like, I was just kind of doing it at home. Like,
I mean, it's kind of what it was until I met the Game and his people. It was just like I was just doing it in the. We have a studio like connected to my parents' garage, so I was just being there, just making beats, and then people from high school know I did it. So I had a homegirl from who was from Compton who went to high school with me, and she knew somebody named Black Friday who was part of the games group, Black Wall Street. So one day she was like, I'm gonna tell them to come over, and then they came through. Game didn't come over, but his best friend Billboard, rest in peace, came. His manager came, and then they're like, yeah, so you want to rock with you? So I started going to the studio that Game had in Compton. So it was like it was kind of a short phase because I was in college too, and I was still in fam, so I didn't really have enough time to really stay over there. Like if I had been in LA, like living there, it would have been a whole different direction. But it was the fact that I would be home for a week or two for break, and I have to go back to FAMU. So I'll be making beats out there and still sending it to him, but I wasn't able to really be around like I wanted to back then. But it was right when he first came out. So it was like September 2004, and then like he dropped January 18th of 2005. So it was that same period.
And did you work with anyone else outside the game?
That was known, not really. So like I met Problem at that same time, and he was still on the come up too. So gave him some beats back then, and a couple rappers who were in that same era, like Lasses Malone, Bishop Lamont. I gave him a beat that he never used it, but I gave him a beat. It was that kind of like weird LA period where it was way before YG, Kendrick, Tyga, and that, but it was after Snoop and Quick and Sugar Free. So it was just that kind of weird dead period. So Game was like the only one who was really big for LA for that period.
So what was your production process like?
Mainly a program called Cubase. It was similar to what people use now called Logic, but it was essentially I would always do the drums first, usually. Most of my beats weren't sampled. It was a couple of interpolations, but mainly it was just I would make the drum beat first, like figuring out what speed I was trying to go, what tempo it was. Like LA has always been more 95 BPM and up, so usually it was more around that tempo. Maybe in the late 88s, 89, but it was rarely ever a trap tempo back then. It was always more upbeat. It was that kind of Dre era, so it was about having those real hard-hitting drums. A lot of the kind of symphonic stuff was big, so I usually have pianos and strings and the bass line. That was like the usual go-to formula back then.
I've always wanted to know, so for people that make beats, like, do you wake up in the middle of the night like, oh, I got something I need to do? Or how do you put beats together? Sometimes
it would be that way. Like, the thing about it is that I would say the most underrated skill of production that I've never really heard anybody mention is being able to translate what's in your head to making it sound exactly like that. Because like the way I compare it is if you hear, you know how karaoke tracks sound? It's like, it's the same exact melody, the same cadence and everything, but it just sounds so cheap and thin versus the real song. It's like the same with production. It's where if you don't know how to get the exact same sounds, it's not gonna sound the same. I had a group I produced for called The Pentagon, so I think it was probably the second track on their album. It was like their biggest song, I would say, at the time. I remember it was probably 11th grade, and I don't know what hit me, but just something hit me to sample the Rosa Parks, Andre saying, So I just had that in my head, like, all right, if I can make a beat around that little sample, I have something. So I just took that one sample. And at first it was just, all right, the drums to it. I took a high tech was big back then. So it was I think it was a kick from high tech. Then there was a snare from either Quick or somebody else. But it was like, all right, I remember the kick was a little bit, it was combined with a hi-hat, and the hi-hat was a little bit off beat. But that was kind of the style back then. Early 2000s, like Music Soul had the same thing on Just Friends. Just Friends, if you listen real close, that hi-hat is a little bit off beat from the kick. So it's the same type of era as that. So I remember just having those drums and then the bass line, and from there it was like, all right, let me layer it. And I just watched Dr. Dre say something about spending like 8 hours on a beat. So I spent like 8 hours on purpose, just like making it overly perfect. Like, let me add a breakdown here, let me add more strings right here. So it was a very elaborate beat. It was almost overproduced in a way, but that's how it came out.
So did you play instruments as well on your own beats?
I wasn't playing any, like, if I played strings or horns, it was more so from the synthesizer. So everything was coming from the synth. I wasn't actually playing a horn or playing a bass, but I was playing it on the synthesizer.
So it's funny. I watch R&B Money. Zaytoven was talking about how he used to be at home doing beats, and people would come by, and he was trying to make sure that, like, you know, his mom believed in him, but I don't think his dad wanted people coming over that much.
I can see my dad was similar.
I was just about to ask that.
Because like the thing was too, I mean, it was LA, it was the 2000s, so it's like it was certain rappers, like the group I produced for was called The Pentagon, and with them, like, you know how it was in that era, like on surface, everybody looked hood. So they looked like some hood dudes, but they really weren't. Like none of them gangbang, but they were from Compton, Watson, South Central. So it's like, and I was right there on Crenshaw and Rosecrans, so just the way they would pull up, like Fat Rat had cornrows, the baggy clothes, and he would pull up in a old like Buick or something.
Right.
So it's just like, if you didn't know him, you'd think he was a gangbanger. So my dad just didn't really like how they looked, just because they looked and felt like gangbangers. And then like, but they were all real polite. I won't say they felt like gangbangers. They looked like them, but like when they talked to you, they were polite. But then also they were cussing a lot. And my dad was, of course, a church drummer. So one time he heard them recording, and he has heard them cussing. He pulled me outside like I don't want them cussing. Like they over here, they got to keep it clean. And I was like, I don't know how we gonna do this. So it was kind of the same type of thing.
Yeah. So tell me again, how old were you when you were producing?
I mean, I started when I was like 9. So when I was producing for other people, I was like 16.
Okay.
I was like 16, 17 when they would be coming over.
Yeah. So if you had all that success, why did you drop it?
I mean, because that was just a kind of a local group. It didn't really blow up, I would say. But as far as getting with the game, it was this interesting time. I think just because I was so far away from it. I was in Florida. I couldn't really be there for everything that happened. And then with that, you probably wouldn't remember that much, but like the game had Black Wall Street, and it was him and his brother who ran it. And then he had other artists, but then within that same year, it collapsed because he was with G Unit too. Right. But that whole thing he had with Black Wall Street collapsed, and my connections were really stronger with his brother and those people than with him.
I see.
So when that collapsed, it was just, okay, I don't really have that same exact plug. And they still had artists with them, but it wasn't the same. And even like his best friend who I met first, he ended up getting killed like right before Game's album came out. He got killed behind my house, which is crazy enough. Wow. I heard the gunshots when I was in Florida on the phone with my best friend. Wow. I heard some gunshots. I'm just like, oh, it's fireworks. It's July 4th. They're like, I think so. The next day, it was like, no, that was gunshot. So it was just a lot of that stuff happening. So I was in Florida, and out there I was producing, but then the style was so different. Like those mid-2000s, LA sound was just a whole different thing from what Florida was doing, from what Atlanta was doing. So it just was not really connecting. Like, I won't say I just lost the passion. I was still doing it, but I was really starting to gravitate more toward doing like R&B beats, I would say, by like 07. But it's just like, I just kind of like outgrew it, it felt like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were at FAMU, what did you major in?
I was actually computer science.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to major in music, but my dad basically told me like with music, you don't really have to major in it because most producers didn't really major in music. It's more so, they might have been in a band or something, but like he was like, focus on something that you have a stable career in, and then with music, like you can do that on the side all day.
Yeah. Do you wish that you had majored in music?
So here's a crazy thing is like, just to be all the way transparent, like I was in college for 6 years because computer science was hard. It was a hard major, but I didn't start DJing until my 5th year. If I had majored in music or anything else, I might have finished in 4 years and I probably wouldn't be a DJ. Now I might have stayed as a producer. So in that case, it might have been better because I might have become a producer, and I still could have become a DJ. But to me, I don't see myself becoming a DJ being in LA. Like I became a DJ because I was in Florida. It was just the whole perfect storm of me being out there playing music at parties that they weren't playing in the club, and then people heard me enough to say, all right, like you should be in the club too. Yeah. But even if I went to Howard or Morehouse, I don't think I would have been a DJ because they had DJs out there who were playing West Coast music. But in Florida, it was nobody playing it at that point. So it was just kind of like one of those perfect storm type things.
Yeah. So how did you like FAMU?
FAMU was great. I mean, it was like, it took forever because it was just a hard major, but like FAMU is like still part of like who I am. Like I'm always like, I'm always going back for homecoming. I'm going back soon. And it's just one of those things that I don't think my life would be a whole different story if I went anywhere else. Yeah. Like for better or worse, but probably worse, I'm sure. Like it's just, I don't even see how it would have happened that way.
Well, shout out to Jason Mitchell, who actually also went to FAMU as well. I feel like I know quite a few FAMU grads. Yeah.
I'm sure you do. Yeah. Because Jason, like funny enough, we had our FAMU picnic. He was there. I had the Black Women Lawyers event that night, and he was the pastor for that. And it's just like, look at us connecting twice the same day. Okay. Yeah. So
with the 6 years there, what do you feel like you gained being in Florida? What did you learn about the style or music or anything like that?
I mean, everything. It was like my whole style really is like, funny enough, I was at a birthday on Tuesday, and my homegirl from Atlanta, her cousin is from D.C., and she went to school, I think, American out there. So we were just talking, and she knows me because she's been coming to my parties for probably 2-3 years now, probably 5 years actually. And then we were just talking, and then whatever I said, she was like, "Wait, you're from LA?" And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "You're really from here?" I'm like, "Yeah, like Gardena, like Crenshaw Rosecrans." And she was like, "I never thought so because your style is so universal. You play everybody's music, like you shout everybody out, like you know so much about every single city." And I was like, "That's from going to FAMU. It's like going to FAMU. You have to learn how to play everybody's music because it's like out there, everybody came from somewhere different. So you have to cater to them." And for me, I started just doing West Coast parties, but then next thing you know, the girls from Louisiana would come to the party, and the girls from DC would come, and the girls from Tampa would come. And like the thing about FAMU is that you have to play people's music that they like. If they don't like it, it's no sugarcoat. And there was never no like, you doing okay, no, it was no like, you did an okay job. It's like, no, you was whack.
Right.
Like he was whack if he didn't play this and that. So you almost got hazed just like everybody else got hazed at FAMU. So you kind of get hazed into being a good DJ because everybody's on your head to learn how to integrate everybody's style at one time. So that whole style really just came from being out there.
Okay, very cool. So how did you come up with your name?
I came up with it when I was a rapper. Like I had different rap names before I was R-Tistic, and I didn't add the DJ to it until college, but I was just R-Tistic when I was a rapper and producer. But I don't know how. I can't tell you how. People have asked me, and I'm like, I used to be like, when I first started, I was RMC, which is a very, very early 90s name. It sounds like an 80s name, technically, like DMC. But
exactly.
I remember wanting to have an R in my name. And I can't tell you how it hit me or when. I remember going to the dictionary at one point, just trying to find like anything with the R, because my real name is Ron, of course. And it's like, I was just trying to figure out some of the R, and I don't know how it hit me, but it did sometime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was sometime around high school.
Yeah. So you were spinning at FAMU, but what made you decide that you wanted to take it to the next level and do it professionally?
It's one of those things that I never even saw myself being a full-time DJ. Even when I was in college, it was more so, okay, like this is fun to do. So when I get back to LA, I'm gonna have a corporate job, and then on weekends I could do clubs, parties, whatever is out there. Because I just didn't see how it would be possible to be a full-time DJ at that point. I didn't see it because even at FAMU, it sounds insane now, but we're taking the lowest rates. Like I was doing full house parties for $40 for 4 or 5 hours, or I would do a club like $150 for 4 hours was like a lot to me back then. And I mean, to be fair, minimum wage was probably like $6 back then, so $150 was high compared to working like if I had been back at the elementary school I was working at. But it was more so just something fun to do on the side. So when I got back, I was just working corporate, but just the more and more I did like parties on the side, when I was doing clubs and I was doing weddings, house parties, everything else, it just kept on getting bigger and bigger. And then my cousin, his name is Merce, he had a concert called Pay Dues, and he was also involved with what's it called, Rock the Bells back then. And with those concerts, he was just like, you think you're ready for it? I'm gonna have you do the main stage. Because being able to rock a concert that's 26,000 people, and for some reason I wasn't even nervous. I was just like, all right, I'm gonna just do it. I already had it in mind of how I was gonna go before each artist. Like, I know Big Crit is going, let me go down south before him. I know Nipsey's going, let me go West Coast before him in Problem. Dom the same way, I'm going West Coast. Joey Badass, let me go East Coast for him. Juicy J, let me go down south for him, but more like ratchet. Like I had it all in my head, and I remember finishing that concert, and I was like, today is Saturday. I just did a huge concert. Tomorrow I'm going to work at 12 noon and taking phone calls, possibly getting yelled at. I'm like, why am I doing that? So it kind of felt like maybe eventually I could become a full-time DJ. But even then, it still felt like it was a big jump because and even Pay Dues, just being transparent, didn't pay a whole lot like you would expect. It wasn't a $10,000 gig or anything close to it. So it was just like, it was dope to have that exposure.
Yeah.
Just doing that. And then winning the flavor battle, I won the McDonald's flavor battle, like really about a year later. That was like January, February 2014. And that's when it was really just like, all right, maybe I am actually good enough to be full-time, because people were in my ear like, why are you still going to work? Why are you still have a corporate?
This.
Yeah. It's like people were like, why are you still have a corporate full-time job? And for me, it was like, I ain't have pride. It was like, I don't care about having to go to work because it's paying bills. Like I have a mortgage. Like if I'm just DJing, I'm not gonna make enough to really survive off of it. So until I was like, if I can get 100K from DJing and somebody's pulling me on tour or something, maybe I'll quit. But until I can make more from DJing than I make at work, I just didn't see it as a thing. But then work just got to the point where the schedule was so bad, I was like, I'm gonna just quit and just figure it out. And I tried to figure it out the first time I quit, and it wasn't ready yet. It was like, all right, let me go back to work, because 9 months into it, I'm like, I'm just not making enough money from DJing. Like, I just didn't have the name yet. I didn't have the notoriety yet. So I went back to work for 3 more years. And then at that point, it was like, all right, maybe it's that time to do it full time.
So we talked that second transition then. Because that was around 2017, 18, right? I remember specifically that part. So what were you doing beforehand? What were you doing in corporate? And then what made you decide, I know you're saying the second time, but what was it about that second time where you felt ready to do it?
The second time just happened way different, because it was like the first time was me actually quitting. Like, if y'all don't change my schedule, I'm leaving, and they wouldn't change it. So I'm like, all right, I'm out. Second time, it was a three-year thing. Really, it was 2 1.5 contracts. So it was basically a 3-year contract. And essentially, they're about to convert us to make us like full-time which I was okay with, even though the DJing stuff was really starting to get big. But I was like, look, it's still full time. But then they realized that there was some type of clause because AT&T had bought DirecTV, and they were like, all right, so we can't just convert you right away. You have to have a 3-month hiatus where you take off for 3 months. And to me, I'm like, that's perfect. I get 3 months to just DJ and do that only, and then go back to work.
Right.
But with those 3 months, I was just like, they hit me up maybe 2 months later, like, all right, you can come back in 2 weeks. And I was like, I don't think I want to come back. And they're in shock. They're like, did you find a new job or what? And I was just like, nah, just DJing has been, thriving. And they're like, oh, they said something like, okay, well, we understand, if you need us, call us back. And I was thinking, all right, that's cool. Like maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, if I need to go back, I'll go back. And that's 5.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And since then, it's just like, I haven't even thought about it. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So even though that opportunity did present itself, you still have been hustling. So let's not minimize that. So I feel like, what was different in your mindset to make that leap at that time?
It was just, everything about it. It was just just to be blunt, way more money, period. It's like I was probably making at this point at least twice what I made the first time when I actually quit. But on top of that, it was just way more consistent. It was just a lot more out of town gigs. Because even like the month after that contract ended and I was on that hiatus, I guess you call it. I had like 3 out of town gigs in 1 month, and they're like out the country and East Coast where it was like, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had been working. So I'm like, let me just see how long I could keep on floating with that. And then it was just making more sense. It's like I'm making more money DJing than I made at work. Yeah. And on top of that, it's just like I get to sleep in. I get to actually have my own freedom with it. So it just made a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So it seems like you had a really decent transition into COVID. All of us were like trying to figure out what we're going to do. We're all stranded at home. And then I see Twitch and you are tearing it up. So tell me about what made you decide to start your Twitch page and just a little bit about that.
I remember when pandemic first hit, because I remember feeling burnout at that period because like not quit, but the job situation ended like March 2018. 2019 was just on the go. I was just DJing all the time. By the time 2020 happened, I had like 3 back-to-back residencies. So, of course, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the main days of working. But then I had a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday every week. So it's like with that, Thursday is my only potential off day. And usually I was doing some on a Thursday I would pick up. So I was kind of feeling burnout. So I remember when pandemic first hit, they're like, yeah, we're going to be, on lockdown for maybe a month or 2. Remember how they said a month or 2? At first, I was happy. I was like, I could survive 2-3 months of no work, of no income. I'm like, that's fine with me. So I'll just chill. And I remember that first week, I remember D Nice was on, I think my homegirl Ashton hit me up like, D Nice is on Instagram Live. I'm like, that's dope. I'm still not even thinking about doing nothing live. And then I remember my manager and her husband, I think her husband had the idea like, he should go live on Instagram on Saturday. And that was on like March 21st. I remember that. So I was like, all right, I'm going to hype it up. I'm going to put a flyer out, hype it up as being like a house party, inside the... Everybody's inside their house kicking it, so I'm gonna promote it. And I remember just that tweet had like 200 retweets, and I'm like, people are hyped just about me being on IG Live. Like, all right, whatever. And I remember doing it from like 7 to like maybe 11 or 12, and I remember people were just on there heavy, and they kept on asking me for my Cash App, and I'm just like, yeah, let me type it real quick, whatever. I'm ignoring it because I'm just like, I'm DJing. I'm not even thinking about that. And I checked it after I was done, and I was just like, that's more than I ever made from one party in my life.
Wow. Okay.
I'm like, how did that happen? Like, I was not expecting or asking for it, but I was just like, let me do it tomorrow then. Let me do it, and looking back, of course, like hindsight 2020, I should have stayed on until 4 a.m. that night because I only went to 11, but people were still on there to where I put a mix on for people to just stay in the chat room and talk.
Yeah.
But I should have just stayed on and kept on interacting. But I realized from that, like, all right, like, there's an audience. Everybody's at home, and they're like, even more than the music, they're in the chat room talking. Like, that's really what the social aspect is. So from that, I started doing, I had the West Side Wednesdays. I started up that Wednesday. I was like, let me just do it all West Coast. And then I did that. And everybody from LA was tuned in, and some of the artists got on. And I'm like, this is different. So I was like, as long as this pandemic goes, let me just keep on going on live. And people were just tipping heavy. And like, I wasn't even asking for it, but I'm like, they tipping. Like, let me just keep on doing that and stacking. And then I think I was going from like March until like Memorial Day is when I went to Twitch because Instagram was just, they kept on blocking me for those copyright issues. So with Twitch, like, it was a hard transition to make because I knew it was going to be rough because everybody's used to Instagram. Like, it's about Instagram. Everybody's already on there. They have an account. Socially, it's easy because that was the biggest aspect, was really the social part. You're meeting people. You see somebody in the chat, you click on their profile, you see who it is. People are probably low-key hooking up from it. Who knows? So it's like, But with Twitch, it's just not as social in that aspect because it's a whole different profile. They have to create a whole new account. But I was like, you know what? Instagram keeps on knocking me off, so I have to go to Twitch. So when I got to Twitch, I realized it's a way better platform for what I do. Now it's like I can show music videos. The audio is clear. There's no copyright issues. I can do backgrounds and everything. So from there, it's like, all right, let me focus on it. So I think I probably kept 2/3 of the crowd that probably transferred.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks, not a lot, but enough people did drop off. And even from the first month, some people did get tired of it because it's like you really are in the house on Instagram. And some folks in some cities, I ain't gonna call them out, Atlanta, but some of them was outside again after a month or two. But overall, it was basically like, people stay consistent. So I remember New Year's Eve, even like, I hyped that up. Like, I'm gonna do a countdown for each time zone. I'm gonna make it like the Black Dick Clark. Like, it's gonna be like every time zone's gonna be a countdown. I'm gonna play a song from that time zone. So I'm gonna play some East Coast when it's the 9 p.m. here and midnight on the East Coast. I'm gonna do something for the Central. I'm gonna probably focus on Chicago and New Orleans. Then Mountain, I had jokes the whole time like Denver. That's all we got. Like, who else is Mountain that's Black? Nobody. So then Pacific, of course, is West Coast. So I just did that, and I made like a lot, like just from having sponsors for that and everything. So basically, Twitch just kept me alive the whole pandemic.
Yeah.
And the pandemic's still going on, obviously, but I would say the whole lockdown, I should call it.
But I would say you made a really smart business move because I remember that transition from IG and everybody was getting kicked off except for D-Nice and maybe Ninth Wonder.
D-Nice,
Ninth Wonder kind of stayed on.
They had the whitelist. I mean, they're friends with Mark Zuckerberg. So it's like,
Ninth moved over to Twitch, but I went over to Twitch because of you. I was like, okay, let me check this out. And you started doing games and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was doing trivia nights and everything.
So have you been able to even maintain that? Because I feel like sometimes you go on Twitch now.
I still do. I still do like R&B on Tuesdays and West Side Wednesdays. The weekends, I should do more pop-ups on the weekends. I don't have the energy after doing stuff in person, but I should do stuff more on the weekends too. But I'm still on it.
So how has the transition been back outside?
It's crazy because me and my boy were just talking about that because like 2021, when things first opened up, like people almost forget how crazy it was when it opened up, like Memorial Day weekend, 2021. Everybody had been bottled up, just like stuck inside on top of getting PPP loans, on top of not spending money. Like 2021 summer, people spent so much money. Like the Dime is my weekly spot on Mondays, of course. And at the Dime, it's a small bar where people rarely buy bottles on a Monday, maybe once every month or two. I remember that whole summer, people were buying bottles the whole summer. People just had money to spend. It was just a crazy time. Everybody was just outside enjoying life. Things kind of slowed down a little bit as far as outside, but then it got big again around February. But this year, so all I have to say, this year it hasn't been slower at all for me, but as far as like the club scene has not been as popping as it was to me before pandemic or 2021. Like certain parties, and one thing about LA now is that it's kind of become like a monopolized thing where people don't really see it that way, but the way I see it is that the big parties are huge. The moderate size, medium, and small ones, some of them have kind of fell off or just not had the same demand. It's like whatever the biggest parties are, if that's coming, that's going to be sold out, and it's 2,000 people. There's some parties that are 200 people that are get canceled because they don't have enough people supporting it. So it's kind of a weird era right now. So it's like, luckily I haven't been able to do all those bigger parties. I've done like the Everyday People, the Hot Water Cornbread, the Trap Poetry, and even like the 99, 2000s party, some of those. But it's like LA is in a weird period. But overall, I still have been able to stay active because even beyond the parties, it's still corporate. It's still a lot of weddings. Like even with that, like once things open back up, all the weddings got pushed back. Some got canceled too, but then some got created because some people were stuck inside the house with the person that they wanted to marry and they ended up getting married. So I had those weddings. So overall, like I've probably done like 20 weddings each year the last couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think is different about you that has kept you sustained? Like even for myself, I feel like I still worked during COVID. A lot of people didn't have jobs. A lot of DJs didn't make it. So what do you think is different about you? I
think because I was able to just kind of connect people in a different way. And one thing I realized about that is that some DJs hated being online because, I mean, I get it because it's just you in the room by yourself. Like I might have had one person over there, maybe at the most two, but it was just really me inside the house solo. But so it probably does feel weird because a lot of DJs, like one DJ told me, he said he hated online. He's like, it's corny. Like I'm going off with like, no energy. I have to have energy. I have to have people dancing in front of me. And my thing, I was like, the way I see it is that it's like DJing on the radio station, except for you have an AOL throwback chat room attached to it. So it's like, if you DJ on the radio, there's nobody in there. It's just you and like the engineer. But instead of that, you have a whole chat room that you can kind of see everybody's reaction. You can see how they're responding to it. So that's the motivation. Like you can tell how they react by that. Because if I remember, it was funny. I remember I played Blueface Tatiana, and I remember people in the chat was like, "Oh, this song is whack now. Like, we tired of it." But I'm like, it's funny how certain songs don't translate because they're at home versus I'm able to play stuff that you can't play in the club. Now I'm playing way more R&B or way more throwbacks or even new stuff that's not really club energy because of the fact that you don't have to depend on people like dancing. So to me, I was able to stay afloat just by building that base and like, you know, expanding my base from that. So now I have people who are out of state who became followers and fans. And
but I would definitely say you've been really innovative. And I think a lot of times we don't look at that for ourselves. Like you were able to say, okay, times are changing or these things are happening. Let me adapt.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to adapt to it. And it's like, that's the main thing. And even when it comes to just, whether it's the music, because even when it comes to DJing in person, like I remember when Afro beats, I remember when it got big in LA 5-6 years ago. I remember going to Ghana in 2014 for my first time and hearing it like in person. Actually, I remember going to an Afro beats party in LA in 2012 before I went to Ghana. But even then it was only Africans there. Like nobody who was there was like Black American except for like the promoter or the people who worked there. Then by 2018, it's like, okay, it's an actual thing that African Americans are into. But for me, it was like, all right, as soon as I heard it in 2014, I'm like, let me pick up on this. Let me learn about that. Like whatever trending music it is, like let me hop on it. Let me learn like what's building, what's bubbling, because music always does change. And it's like some DJs, they feel like they don't like whatever is happening, or they might feel like this new stuff is whack. And the thing is, for me, I don't have to like every new song I play, but let me at least know what it is and learn how to integrate. And one thing with me is just, I've always kind of prided myself in learning different crowds, because there's not too many of us here who can do 15 different parties that I've done, where I can do even just this summer doing an LA function versus Everyday People versus Hot Water Cornbread versus 99 2000s party versus the R&B party I did. What was it called? For Lovers Only. That's 5 different parties, but I have 5 totally different sets. So it's where if you went to all 5 of those parties, I'm not playing the same Dreams and Nightmares and Swag Surfing that at every party. It's like at this R&B party, I'm playing stuff that you ain't gonna hear at these other parties. At LA function, I can go deeper LA. At the Everyday People, I'm going a little bit more eclectic on I'm going house and this and that, K-Tronada. So it's just like learning each and every crowd is one thing. Because whenever I go to a party and I hear stuff I haven't heard, it's like, let me learn what that is. Like, let me do research. A lot of DJs don't go to clubs that they don't get hired for. They feel like if they don't hire me, I don't want to go. I'm like, well, maybe they're not hiring you because they don't think that you even know how to do that. So even with Everyday People, like I didn't get hired for that until this year. That's been around forever. But it was like, let me actually go to it versus just like, oh, I see it's happening, but all right, whatever. Like I started going to it more so last year. And I'll just go, and I met MoMA, and MoMA was just one of the coolest dudes ever. I'm like, let me invite him to my parties. And it's just like, I never once asked him to do it. It's just like, I like being there and hearing what they play because it's different. And then him hearing me at the dime, he was like, hey, you want to do it? I'm like, I'm down for it. So it's about being organic too, because a lot of times people just see parties. Like even when I was doing Grits and Biscuits, like people would ask me, like people who I didn't even know would hit me up like, can I DJ that? And I'm like, I'm doing it because they hired me. I can't hire somebody else. But at the same time, it's like, who are you? Have you been to it before? Do you even know what they play?
So you rock the crowd all the time. Do you ever go to an event and maybe you're not in a great mood? How do you pump yourself up to then give to everybody else?
Realizing it's not about you in that moment and just kind of like figuring out what it is that gets you there. Because once you start DJing, usually your move can elevate. But it is sometimes where it's just like, all right, let me push myself, not force, but let me just kind of push myself to have that energy. And usually like it's kind of like anything else, like sports or whatever else that requires adrenaline. I feel like I'm never in a bad mood. It's more so I might just be tired or burnt out. And there's been a lot of parties where I remember one day I had like 3 different parties, and that third party I'm driving there like it's gonna be all right. Let me just power up, and then I get there, and as soon as I'm DJing, I get hype. I'm hyped now. I see the crowd. I'm energized off of them. And as soon as I played that last song and pressed stop, I sat down and was like, yo, I could pass out right now. Like I used every ounce of energy I had in me just for that last set to push through, but. Once I finish, it's like, all right, I can go home and go to sleep now, finally. Okay. But it's just about kind of like pushing through in that moment.
Very, very cool. All right, so let's transition a little bit and just talk about what you're doing as an educator now. Yeah,
so basically I've been doing, been going to certain colleges and doing guest lectures. So it's been 2 that I did in Virginia recently. What was it called? Mary Washington and Germanna College out there in Virginia. And with those, it's just about, I've had different topics. I've actually been out there about 5 times now. And each one was a different topic. It's been about everything from samples to the history of down south hip hop, of West Coast hip hop, the history of hip hop itself. I've done some at some high schools in LA and even at elementary schools out here too. middle school out here, Stephen White. I did even Hamilton High School out here is like to me, like the greatest school when it comes to music in LA. That's where a lot of artists went. Okay. So it's going to those schools and really just like, the thing is, you're still using your DJ mind as far as keeping the audience engaged. So, kids don't like nobody likes being taught anything, meaning like, if you have to go somewhere and sit, it's all right, what they talking about, but it's about making it interactive and making them enjoy it. So just showing those common links, like, all right, what's your favorite song? You like this song from Lotto? That came from this. So your song, it might be NBA Youngboy. All right, so he came from this city, their artist, you ever heard of Master P? What was his label called? One person knows, No Limit. So No Limit Records is where, so it's figuring out how to connect. And a lot of times with kids and with students, it's always those, I feel like every time I do it, it's always one or two students who know everything. It's always those two, like, who probably because their dad, one kid told me his dad was a DJ, so it made sense. One kid in Virginia told me he was a producer. So it's always going to be those kids who are super involved. It's always going to be the polar opposite. It's going to be a couple kids who are just not engaged at all. So I'm not going to pick on them. I'm just let them live. But it's the ones who are like eager to learn. Let me just focus on everybody else and just kind of like make it fun for them. So it's been a good time. It's always funny seeing what they know because I feel like they know a lot of stuff from the 60s, 70s, 80s that you would expect, like when it comes to the Marvin Gayes and the...
Really? I always feel like the young ones don't know much.
They do. It's like, and the kids, they know it. It's just about, they might not listen to it the same way, but I feel like it's weird generation gaps because the thing is, I'm realizing too, a lot of the kids' parents' ages range. It's like when I'm doing, say, a middle school, when they're like 10 to 14, their parents can range from being 32 to like 55.
Right.
And it's like with that, it's like the ones whose parents are in the mid 30s, like they taught them the stuff from the 2000s. So they know the Ashantis and the Ja Rules and the Snoop and whatever it was 90s, 2000s. Then if their parents are a little bit older, they taught them about Bobby Brown and New Edition and stuff like that. But then they all do know the main songs because if you think about it, like the Marvin Gaye songs, they know those from commercials. They hear those in commercials. They knew like Temptations. They got hyped for Temptations. When I played, what did I play from them? It wasn't Ain't Too Proud to Beg. Whatever I played, My Girl. Like My Girl, like they know those main songs. Okay. So it's like they'll know those, but they got hyped to Bobby Brown and New Edition because of the movie.
Nice.
They learn those, but then they didn't know about ABC Aisha. So I showed them Aisha like, all right, so BBD had like a baby, like a junior group.
Right.
They got hyped to that because they're like, oh wow, like because I realized too that the kids don't have any kid groups anymore, so they end up gravitating to those kid groups because they don't even have it for their own generation.
Right.
So they're seeing like ABC dancing and hype with the flat tops and colorful clothes, and they're hyped to it. So it's kind of crazy just seeing. It made me realize that the certain stuff that we are missing, the kids would love it if it was out. There's no more boy bands, there's no more girl groups, but like they love all those. They know about Destiny's Child, they know about In Vogue, TLC. Wow. So they don't know Jade as much. They knew SWV.
Exactly. Yeah. Jade is my group.
Yeah. They don't know Jade. They won't really know like an intro.
Right.
H-Town, they don't know by name, but they might know the song. So
but then they know all the mainstream. I get that.
And it's like one thing about it is that because I think our generation is so much into 90s and 2000s, like more than the people who were our age 20 years ago were into the 50s and 60s music, if that makes sense. I feel like they actually know more about music from before their time than we did in a crazy sense. Wow. In a weird sense, because I feel like if you think about it, like a lot of people probably won't agree, but if you think about it this way, like most of us who are born mid 80s, like we know the Aretha Franklin, all that type of stuff, of course. So we know all the mainstream stuff, but like that's 70s, that's a decade before us. If you go 60s, 50s, not as much. But these kids were born in the 2000s and they know 80s and 70s and 60s. We don't really know Billy Eckstine the same way. We don't really know as much about even the Cab Calloway when it comes to jazz and that type of music. If our parents weren't jazz heads, we probably don't know it as much. Like I know it because my dad's a jazz musician, but like when it comes to stuff that's 40 years older than us, it's like that's too old. But for them being born in 2000, for them to know something from the 70s, it's kind of impressive.
Yeah. So in terms of guest lecturing, is that something you want to do more of, or do you want to be an adjunct professor? Just curious if you're moving.
Yeah, potentially. Direction. Yeah, probably in the future. I think that's probably where I want to go. Like, I don't want to be 55, 60, still doing clubs every week. I want it to be where I could do a club because like Jazzy Jeff is probably in that age range, but he's Jazzy Jeff and he's not doing it every day of the week. It's more so he's doing these special events, traveling. So if I can have it that way where I'm doing a pop-up every couple of weeks or I'm doing special events, but I don't want to have to DJ to live when I'm like in my 50s and 60s.
Right. What else do you have that you want to get into?
I mean, the lectures is a main focus, but also I still want to be involved with artists at some capacity. I don't know at what level right now because it's a weird era where like people have joked about A&R stands for algorithms and something else, like basically just saying that A&R. And the thing is, I know people who are A&Rs and they still do have serve a purpose, but it's like
the old school A&R.
It's a weird era where it's kind of, all right, who's hot, who's trending on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, pick them up. All right, let's milk them for the money we can get off them. All right, they play out. Who's next? All right, it's not the same focus on long term. And it's like, for me, it's where I want to combine my knowledge of the past and of what makes music successful, but also like integrating that with the new artists and what they could do musically. And I feel like if I did work with artists more so, even though I'm still somewhat of a bigger hip hop fan than R&B, to an extent I am, like I still grew up more hip hop than R&B, but I actually would rather work in the R&B capacity than hip hop, if that makes sense. So whether it was doing A&R, even being an executive producer or even a co-producer, like I still feel like I might not be the hands-on producer that I used to be when I was in high school and middle school, but I feel like I could still co-produce and kind of tell producers which direction to go, because I feel like R&B is definitely, it's not dead, but it's not what it was, obviously, in previous decades.
You don't think it's gotten better in the last couple of years?
I was going to say, it's definitely getting better. Like, it's better, but it's not what it was for us before, which it may never be again, but it's one of those conflicting things. But I feel like the main thing that is lacking is upbeat party R&B, but at the same time, it's a strange era. People are so used to partying to hip hop, it's hard to make them party to R&B now. Because it's like Neo has a new song with the Jeanne sample. It's fire, but it's like, how do you even play that when you playing a little Dirk 10 minutes later? It's like, where does it even fit if it's not an R&B party? So it's like, the fact that we have R&B parties is crazy if you think about it, because 10 years ago, there's no R&B parties. There's no R&B parties ever in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, because we played R&B at parties. You didn't need an R&B party to be separate from a hip hop party until recently, because hip hop is so different from R&B now. So it's like, with that, it's like, how can we get R&B to be a dominant enough genre again where we're playing it at parties and it's not even a question? Like Beyonce was almost mind-blowing last year because we're playing Cuff It, but even with that, you wouldn't hear Cuff It at the trendy bottle popping spot. You might hear it the last 5 minutes, but you weren't going to hear that next to Glorilla. So that's the thing about it.
Yeah, no, I think you have a great specialty knowing samples and everything like that. Anytime that I come to your page, I'm looking on your stories, I feel like you're educating us. So I'm excited for what you're getting ready to do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, though.
So very last question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think your magic is?
My magic is, I would say, the ability to just connect crowds, audiences, whether in person or through online formats. Just being able to bring a certain joy in them that they didn't even know that they had in them. You know, one thing about DJing is that you hear stories sometimes weeks, months, years later. Like, I've done weddings where I'm at the wedding and then they'll be talking like during toast, and they'll say, yeah, like we met at R-Tistic's party, or even recently people have met from my chat rooms on Twitch and on Instagram. So, and it's all through music. It's like just having that magic of just being able to connect people is always what I always say I pride myself in.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So just in case, what else is next for you?
I only want to mention parties, because parties, parties come and go. But I would say what's next for me is just continuously just, figuring out different ways to educate. So I might even consider doing an online class, just kind of teaching people music or even DJing online. And I do still want to write my book. I have a book that's like a third reading that I just have not been able to organically, finish, because it's one of those things that the more I DJ, the more I'm like, wow, like this part of the book is outdated now. Like, how do I even like write something that ends up being a standard versus just being based on, being in the moment. So that's something that might not come out for 5-10 more years, but it's something that is still in my plans.
And what's your book about, just so I know?
It's basically just about the art of DJing, but like DJing from a sense of, I don't want it to just be like my biography. I want it to be kind of a combination. Like, if you ever read Hill Harper's The Conversation, like the way he's telling his story like loosely throughout the book, but it's more so he's integrating everybody else's opinions. So he's talking to elders, he's talking to young folks, and the same for me. I want to be able to talk to DJs like, what do you feel about this? Like, I might say, when it comes to say reading the crowd or opening up for a club, like going early, like you should. Like, in my opinion, I feel this is the best way, but I talked to so-and-so, they feel you should do this.
Okay.
So-and-so feels you should do this. So it's kind of giving different opinions. I don't want it to really just be based on what I personally feel.
Okay,
So,
that's awesome. Well, I hope you finish it. I know how it is. I'm working on a book as well.
Okay. Good luck with that. I know how. Yeah.
So I understand the struggle.
It could be a lot for sure. So,
So tell the people where we can find you.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at DJ R-Tistic. My website is DJR-TISTIC. I'm also on Twitch at R-Tistic 310. That's R-Tistic with no A. So R-Tistic 310. And everything else is from there. So go there. Even though my Instagram and Twitter, if you go to my bio link, it has all my links to my SoundCloud, Mixcloud, all my mixes, all that. My TikTok is the same, DJ R-Tistic. So.
Awesome. If you guys liked what you watched or listened to, you can go to Trust Your Magic on YouTube, iTunes, and also Spotify. It's been wonderful hanging out with R-Tistic, and we will see y'all next time.
Let's get it. Appreciate you for having me, though.
Absolutely.
Thank you.